He made me believe I was crazy, but turns out I was right all along. I still remember the day I met Marco like it was yesterday. We were at a conference in downtown Houston, surrounded by the who's who of the oil and gas industry. He walked into the room, and I swear, the whole room stopped. He had this charismatic smile and piercing blue eyes that seemed to see right through me. We struck up a conversation, and I was hooked. He was charming, successful, and seemed to genuinely care about what I had to say. As we started dating, I felt like I was on cloud nine. He was my rock, my partner in every sense of the word. I trusted him more than anyone, and he knew it. He controlled our finances, but I never thought twice about it. He was good with money, and I was terrible. I figured it was one less thing for me to worry about. But looking back, I can see the signs were there. He suddenly started buying new clothes and cologne, and he'd get all dressed up for no reason at all. He'd tell me he was working late, but when I would call him, he'd always answer on the first ring, like he was waiting for my call. He stopped saying, "I love you" first, and I brushed it off as him being busy. He'd delete his text messages and browser history regularly, but I thought that was just him being paranoid about work. I quit my job to support his career, and I thought we were building a life together. We talked about starting a family, and I was excited to be a stay-at-home mom. But things started to change. He'd get these mysterious texts, and he'd brush them off as work-related. He'd take long business trips, and I would feel like I was losing him. I remember one night, he came home from a trip, and I was cooking dinner. He walked in, and I could smell the cologne on him. It was a new scent, one I would never smelled before. I asked him about it, and he told me it was just something he'd picked up at the airport. I did not think much of it at the time, but now I realize it was a sign. It was not until I found women's clothing in our laundry that my world came crashing down. A silk scarf, a pair of high heels, a dress that was not mine. I felt like I would have been punched in the gut. I tried to brush it off, told myself it must have been a mistake, but the doubt had already crept in. And then, there was the story he told me. He said he'd been working late one night and he'd met a woman at a bar. He told me they'd just talked, that nothing had happened. But when I asked him about it a few days later, he forgot details. He could not remember the woman's name or what she looked like. That's when I knew something was off. It was not until I found the engagement ring that I realized the extent of his betrayal. It was identical to mine, but smaller. I felt like I had been living in a dream, and suddenly I was awake. I knew I had to confront him, but I was scared. I did not know what I was going to find out, but I knew I had to try. I took a deep breath and waited for him to come home. When he walked in the door, I could see the guilt written all over his face. "Hey, how was your day?" he asked, like nothing was wrong. I looked at him, and I felt a mix of emotions. I was angry, hurt, and scared. But most of all, I was sad. I was sad that I would wasted 3 years of my life on him. "Marco, we need to talk," I said, my voice shaking. He looked at me, and for a moment, I thought I saw a glimmer of remorse. But then his expression changed, and he became defensive. "What's going on?" he asked, his voice rising. I took a deep breath and let it all out. I told him about the clothes, the texts, the engagement ring. He tried to deny it, to gaslight me into thinking I was crazy. But I had proof. I had the ring, the clothes, and my intuition. As we stood there facing each other, I realized that I had a choice. I could stay in this toxic relationship, or I could leave. I could forgive him, or I could walk away. I looked at him, and I felt a sense of calm wash over me. I knew what I had to do. "I'm leaving," I said, my voice firm. He looked at me, shocked, and for a moment, I felt a pang of sadness. I was going to miss him, but I was not going to miss the pain he'd caused me. As I walked out the door, I knew I had a long road ahead of me. I had to heal, to pick up the pieces of my shattered heart. But I also knew that I was strong. I was strong enough to leave, to start over, and to build a new life. I thought about my children, and how they deserved better than to see this. I thought about my boss, who had given me time off to heal. I knew I was not alone, and that gave me the strength to keep going. As I looked back at the life I would built with Marco, I realized that it was all a lie. He'd built a facade, a life that was not real. But I was going to build a new life, one that was authentic, one that was mine. And as I walked away from the pain and the heartache, I knew that I was going to be okay. I was going to rise from the ashes, stronger, wiser, and more resilient than ever before.